Thank you for tuning in, and thanks to Kathryn and Mariana for being here today. Kathryn, I wanted to start with you. Tell us a little bit about what motivated you to get into documentary filmmaking as opposed to fiction.
So my background as a documentary filmmaker is a little bit untraditional in the way that I got into the film industry in general. Um, most of my career has been spent working in politics and then as a humanitarian. So I did a lot of political campaigns, and then I moved abroad and worked in Haiti for many years doing service work and infrastructure building there. Um, I helped to build out a really big organization in Haiti called Artists for Peace and Justice, and um, while I loved the work and I love the organization still and its mission and what all the accomplishments that it's made, I realized that, working in direct relief can build really important institutions in places that need it. But if you really want to change the cycles of systemic poverty that create the need for those types of programs in schools, then you have to tell a bigger story. It can't just be about one school or one place. And so I got into documentary because I think that it is the most effective way to tell a bigger story and to reach as many people as possible to try and make a change.
And speaking of making change, Mariana, you can answer this too. I'm interested in how both of you think that documentaries impact the world for good.
Mhm. I mean, on a larger note, I would say it's storytelling, but documentaries in particular, it's the best tool out there when it comes to gaining knowledge, to understanding our world, to building compassion and empathy. Empathy in the filmmaking that I've done has always been incredibly important. There's this idea that with every documentary you watch, you're sort of increasing your circle of empathy, right? Because it's this incredible opportunity that you have to walk in someone's shoes for an hour or two of your day. And that's a really important and powerful starting point, of a conversation starter to sort of understand who we are and the choices we've made and the lives we lead.
Mm-hmm. Kathryn, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything that Mariana said, I wholeheartedly agree with. Storytelling is the best vehicle, in my opinion, to make a change. And I think that point about empathy is really one of the most powerful parts about documentary filmmaking. So, if you look at documentary films from just the past year, one of my favorites was a film called For Sama, which was nominated for an Oscar and made by a Syrian journalist named Wad Al-Khattab. And the film is remarkable, not because it's shot very well or because, it's like has tons of geopolitical facts and figures or pretends to educate people fully on all of these complex issues surrounding the Syrian conflict. But instead, it's remarkable because you are right there with her and her family as they're struggling and trying to survive in this unbelievable, horrible war. And you're right there in it with her. And there's not a lot of experiences that we can have, especially now that we're all stuck at home, where you can really go so fully into these other worlds. And I think that that's one of the most powerful capabilities of documentary film.
Absolutely. Speaking of going into other worlds, Mariana, you got into a whole other world of trafficking for your new documentary series for National Geographic. We're going to take a look at the clip soon, but set it up for us. Tell us a little bit about what it's about.
Sure thing. Well, Trafficked is a new docuseries for National Geographic. It's about global black markets and trafficking networks around the world. I spent the last year surrounded or trying to embed and to gain access to these criminal networks and trafficking organizations. And, the idea behind it and why I really wanted to do this series, it started all with this idea that we know so much about the formal economy, and yet we know so little about the informal economy, the gray and black markets that exist. We can pick up our phone right now, for example, and figure out what the stock price for Zoom is. But if you ask people what the price for a kilo of cocaine is, most people don't know, or if they do, they won't tell you. And yet the market cap for Zoom, I checked just before this conference started, is 40 something billion dollars, and the international drug trade is estimated at 350 to 500 billion dollars a year. You know, this informal economy actually accounts for 60% of the world's economy. And again, we know so little about this. And so for us, it was important to try to figure it out, see how much we can learn from these power structures and the way these organizations work, because there is actually a lot that we can learn. And you know, it's a window into this world.
Wow. Okay, let's take a look at the trailer.
Okay, we're here. Right now, it's go time. Should I be concerned about my security? This hasn't actually ever been filmed before.
Money is the root of all evil.
We're heading to meet the owner of a drug operation.
Do you have a phone?
I do.
I'd like to have it.
What's happening? It's the belly of the beast. Esconder completamente tu identidad y nadie va a saber quién eres. We're thinking of taking our cameras and robbing them.
Everything, of course.
I don't know how to feel about this.
What are you going to do with $19.42 million? They were billionaires before Bill Gates.
This is the infamous human experiment lab. ¿Y después por qué ahora tienes confianza en mí?
Pues no tengo confianza. No, pero estamos diciendo lo que siempre no. Vivo no van a salir.
It's military grade.
Yes, ma'am.
Being superhuman is the game.
It's a massive, massive fraud. This town was built on coke money.
Sounds like money to me, no?
No one knows what's going on behind closed doors.
Wow, Mariana, that looked so intense. What was that like for you? And what was the riskiest situation you faced while making that doc?
Thank you. It's really, you know, one of the biggest goals for me and for National Geographic is that we didn't want to do a show that painted the world as black and white, as them being the criminals and the bad guys and us being the good guys. I think the world is much more gray than that. And there was one episode, I mean, I think all of them, but one particular episode that I think encapsulates that well, which was when we did one of the episodes was about cocaine trafficking, and we were in the Peruvian Amazon in the jungle, in the high mountain jungle, and we had gained access to this chemist, this cocaine chemist, who was going to take us down to his lab. He forgot to tell us, however, that his lab was deep in the middle of the jungle and we had to hike for miles at night in the pitch dark. It was also a very, very dark night. There was no moon out. And he didn't want people to know that we were there, so we weren't allowed to bring any lights or flashlights of any kind. So we're carrying all our gear down this cliff going down the jungle, and it's super slippery and wet, and we're falling left and right, and it's a disaster. But at the end, we made it down safely, and we were able to film this cocaine lab. And while doing this, we also interviewed a handful of mochileros, which are backpackers essentially, all of them teenagers, who carry the drugs, cocaine, up to 10 kilos, 22 pounds and more of cocaine on their backs out of the jungle into the mountains and out of this region. Incredibly dangerous, backbreaking and dangerous work. And I asked them, if you weren't doing this, what would you rather be doing? And one of them said, my dream is to become a dentist. And my parents don't have money and they can't afford to send me to school. So this is the only way that I can make some money, in the hopes that one day I can save enough to become a dentist. And I asked him, why a dentist? And he said, well, because I want to make people smile, big smiles. You know, and this is the kind of story that I hope, you know, that resonated with me and with our team, and that I hope will resonate with the people that watch Trafficked.
Wow, amazing. Now, Kathryn, your documentary work is more in like the activism and social justice realm, but I'm sure there's some element of risk that you may have faced while you're making those types of docs. Do you have a limit as to like how far you'll go, and how do you determine the type of risk that you want to take?
You know, it really depends on the project, I think. And I think that any filmmaker will sort of hedge when it comes to that question, because Like if you're really passionate about telling a story and it's like a story that has to get out of you, then you're going to maybe engage in some risky behavior. I mean, the story that Mariana just told, like on its face is absolutely insane. Like going down a mountain into a cocaine den, like in the middle of the night, like no one would do that. It's insane to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've taken risks, you know, even in the social justice space, like, you know, there are always tricky situations and you just have to trust your instincts and make sure that you're not pushing too far.
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes it's more about worrying about endangering the person that's your subject as opposed to yourself, right?
Totally. So the first film that I directed is about girls' education in remote northern Pakistan. And that was a huge, you know, consideration that we had was, you know, the subject of the film is a young woman named Madiha. And we had to have serious conversations with not only her family and her, but also like the whole community of elders in her village, and make sure that there was total community buy-in so that it wouldn't put her at risk to be the face of girls' education in that region.
Yeah.
So those types of risks, you know, are necessary sometimes to tell stories where there are complex socio or geopolitical issues or different inequalities that are going to be exposed.
Mm-hmm.
But truly, I mean, I think that it is something that's very unique about documentary filmmakers is like you are willing to go as far as you need to make sure that the truth is told and that you're, you know, shedding light on whatever story that you're trying to tell.
Absolutely. I think it's safe to say documentaries are having a real moment now, and they've been for a while. I know even if you look now, the conversations that are driving pop culture right now are pushed by documentaries. Like this year, it's Tiger King. Last year was Fire Festival. And like, I feel the public appetite for nonfiction has exploded, and it's really opened the doors for so many different kinds of documentary filmmakers to flourish. What do you guys think was the tipping point for docs?
Kathryn, I can talk a little bit just about, you know, I think there's more content out there. I think there's better content out there as well. I think people realize that docs are way more fun and great to watch than movies. I personally much prefer to watch a good doc than a good movie. And I think that people funding documentaries realize that there's, you know, that there's an audience out there for good documentaries, for good content, and they're willing to fund these docs. So it's where we're living what I hope is not the goal time of documentary, because I hope it keeps going up and up and we start watching more and more documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, at XTR, what we like to say is that it's the documentary revolution, because there's two simultaneous things that we see that are sort of creating that tipping point for docs. And funding for sure is a big part of it, but so much of it is about access in two different ways. The first is that now there's all these streamers online where documentaries have this huge platform and huge ability to reach an audience that they never could before. You know, like when I was growing up, if you wanted to see a documentary in a theater, you had to go to like the Art House Theater 2 towns away on a Tuesday night specifically for doc night.
Yeah.
And now, you know, on Netflix, if you're looking at the tiles, it's Tiger King next to Avengers Endgame or whatever, you know, the big budget commercial movie is. And then the second part of it in terms of access is that it's easier, you know, to have access to the technology as a filmmaker. So, you know, everybody has a pretty powerful camera if they have a smartphone in their hands. And so it enables people to make quick progress, keep making progress on their films. And those two things I think are helping us to see this explosion of nonfiction content.
I would also add that I think there are more people wanting to be documentary filmmakers now. When I grew up in Portugal, I had no access to documentaries. It just wasn't something I knew I wanted to be a journalist. I went to journalism school, but I thought journalism was nightly news journalism. I didn't know that there was this whole world of documentaries. And when I moved to the United States and I started watching docs, that's when I realized, like, this is incredible. I can combine my two passions of journalism and filmmaking, and I can make this work, and people will actually pay me to do this.
Yes, absolutely. Kathryn, what's next from XTR Films?
We have a ton of exciting projects we're about to announce. The exciting thing about documentary is that you can keep making progress even during the pandemic and during quarantine. So look out for a bunch of films that will be rolling out from our slate over the next 6 months.
Kathryn, Mariana, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Camille. Thanks so much.
Thank you.